Airbnb, the company that allows you to stay in someone's house for a short amount of time, definitely not a weird thing, has become incredibly popular for the past decade and a half. These rentals can be simply the space to live in for a bit, usually while visiting a location and you need somewhere to stay and you don't want to stay in a hotel. Or it can be because of a unique experience that it brings to you and your boring, slowly ending, miserable excuse for life. So, this video I ask you, would you rather Airbnb in the Bolton's home, the Dreadfort, or in the probably super haunted Harrenhal? Okay, let's start with the Dreadfort because that's going to be the shorter one. So the Dreadfort is located in the north on the upper part of the Weeping Water, which, by the way, avoid the Weeping Water as well because some majorly bad things have happened there, including the R word and murder. But, you know, you could go swimming in this river. I mean, you know, make a trip to the ocean too. It's pretty close to the Dreadfort. Also, there's tons of forest to explore, so if you're really into hiking and stuff, that could be great. As you know, House Bolton ruled the Dreadfort as Red Kings for thousands of years, but eventually the Starks were able to beat them into submission. You know, the evil Starks. They were actually the last ones to hold out against the Starks and fight against them and their evil skin-changing warging abilities, but, you know, in the end, you really can't beat someone that has an advantage of magic. Now, yes, the hangman is the House Bolton symbol, a very literal depiction of what they love to do to their enemies, and if a house loves to flay people, they're probably into some other sick shit too. I'm just saying. Like, for example, one Red King just couldn't help himself and loved shoving his arm into the stomachs of his enemies and pulling their entrails out. So that's lots of fun. Which probably has led to a haunting or two. There has to be at least one person that had his entrails pulled out by one of the Red Kings, and now he's haunting the castle all like, where are my intestines? Now, there are very credible tales, and I don't fault them at all for this, that the Red Kings wore cloaks made from the skins of the Stark princes that they had captured and flayed during their years of war with them, desperately fighting to keep their crowns and keep their land as it was. In fact, they have a hidden chamber in their precious Dreadfort where they keep the skins of those Starks and other enemies that they needed to teach a lesson or two, or where they want to fashion some of their nice skin clothing. Which is another reason why I think this place is probably haunted and has some ghosts. You can't keep flaying people alive and not get at least one or two angry spirits that decide to haunt the shit out of your castle. I know, I've been there. And I know the Starks told them ages ago, hey guys, buddies, friends, you have to stop flaying people. You have to stop peeling off people's skin and wearing it as clothing. It's a little out there. Again, Starks just judgmental fucks. However, I highly doubt the Boltons have given up their hobby, and if you visit the Dreadfort or Airbnb here for a week, you do risk, if you piss off one of the Boltons, ending up in their secret chamber to become a new flesh cloak. But the castle is also hella spooky even without the secret kink room that they have. It's a secure fortress with massive towers, but the decor is just a little twisted. In the Great Hall, which by the way, the ceilings are black from all the smoke, so that's a fun smoky atmosphere. If you have asthma or breathing problems at all, I'm really sorry if you decide to stay here. But they've decorated their hall with skeletal human hands that hold torches. And I do appreciate that they're basically using all of their enemy. They're not wasting, they're recycling. So yes, that's a good thing. I just don't know if I want to chill for a week, or if you do, in a home that uses skeletal hands to hold torches. Going back to the angry spirits, if somebody murdered you and used your skeleton as decor in their castle, yeah, you might want to stay around and give one or two of the Lord's ED, you know? I guess if you went in October during the spooky season, you could just pretend like it was all part of Halloween decorations. I guess some other pro things if you want to stay in this Airbnb for a week. The Lord's son is a little bit unhinged, but I hear he goes on a lot of hunts and he has dogs, so if you're a dog person or like hunting, this actually might be the vacation for you. Also, it's really cold up in the north, so if you're into skiing or sledding or, I don't know, any of those type activities, this would be where you want to go. Okay, let's move on to Harrenhal, and you know, what you can expect if you Airbnb here. I feel like you'd be hard-pressed to find a location more potentially cursed and haunted than Harrenhal. This castle was constructed about 300 years before modern Westeros time by an Ironborn king, Harren the Black, also called Harren the Whore, who ruled the Riverlands at the time. Harren began the construction of Harrenhal because he wanted a magnificent castle to rule the Iron Islands and Riverlands from. The construction of this castle took about 40 years, and the people that worked on it suffered greatly. Thousands of captives died in the quarries, chained sleds, or died laboring on the huge towers. So not a great start when the home you're building results in the death of a lot of people working on it that didn't even want to work on it. They were just your slaves. There's also the belief that maybe Harren mixed blood into the mortar just to make it enhanced with spells of protection and such, which didn't help him, which I'll get to. So that could be too. You know, you're forced to work on this castle, you die in a horrible way, exhausted, and then your blood is mixed into the foundation. You might want to haunt the place. After all the atrocities, and seriously, the Riverlands people just hated that guy, Harren's castle was finished right before Aegon the Conqueror came to Westeros, and he believed that none could penetrate his castle, so Harren hid his sons and his loyal subjects inside Harrenhal. Which, as we know, that was a huge mistake because Aegon took his dragon and just descended on the castle, bathed it in black fire with swirls of red, and everything just went up in flames. Harren's men caught fire along with straw wool, bread, salted beef, grain, anything and everything they had up there in the castle, hoping to wait out Aegon. It's actually said the screaming of the Ironborn being enveloped by the flames as they ran across the yards and fell from the wall walks to die upon the ground was just horrendous to hear. I'm guessing at least one of those men that fell off the walkways or were running around screaming engulfed in dragon fire probably stayed to haunt the castle. Men outside the castle that saw this event reported that the towers of Harrenhal glowed red like 5 great candles, and then just like candles, they began to twist and melt, with molten stone running down their sides. Harren and his son met the fate as his men. Him and his sons died in the fires that consumed his castle, and with them, actually, House Whore went extinct. Given it was a very proud house and Harren was a very proud man, maybe he stuck around to haunt the castle a bit. Actually, it's said, and this is just one tale, that Harren and his sons walked the halls by night of Harrenhal afire. And if you look upon them, you burst into flames. So if you Airbnb here, you run into the chance of, let's say, you're like, oh, I need a glass of water, it's late at night. You go in the hall, boom. One of Harren's sons' ghosts who are on fire, you see them, and then you burst into fire yourself, and then you're paying massive medical bills for 2nd and 3rd degree burns. So, besides the thousands of deaths working on the castle, we can add hundreds roasting alive in the castle. But that's not even close to the fucked up shit that has happened in Harrenhal. I'm serious. After Harren's death, Harrenhal never remained in the hands of one house for long. So if you're Airbnb-ing here, there's a lot of instability with the host, so maybe you Airbnb here one time and you have a great experience with one host of the castle. Well, you could go back next year and it could be into some other asshole's hands. You don't know. Now, this all goes back to it believing it's cursed because Harren may have mixed human blood into the mortar for the stonework, and the combination of all the deaths there in Harren's ego created a curse that now exists at Harrenhal. A curse that prevents any lord from holding it indefinitely. And this curse does seem pretty real. I mean, there's a lot of evidence for it. Any house that has taken over Harrenhal has died out. House Corus was the 2nd house to become extinct during Ā'nih's I's reign. The lord of this house, when it went extinct, was called Gorgon the Guest, and he loved to take lord's right of first night. I know you guys all know it. It's just where, let's say someone in your land, a small folk's getting married, you as the lord can decide on the wedding night to bed the bride first. Understandably, people didn't really like that, so the lord of Harrenhal, Gorgon the Guest, was later gelded in the castle and murdered, ending his house. Next, House Harroway took over Harrenhal. House Harroway had a terrible fate. They supported the Targaryen king after Ā'nih's I, Maegor I, the dude that usurped the throne from his nephews. Maegor ended up marrying Alice Harroway, and when she gave birth to a monster, Maegor was convinced it was because she had cheated. Now, his other wife, Tyanna of the Tower, convinced him of that, but still. Because of that, he had every Harroway he could find executed. So that's house number 3 extinct. The castle then passed to House Towers, specifically Walton Towers, who won it by slaughtering a ton of people. However, Walton died soon after his injuries, and 2 generations later his house failed, and then the house was passed to House Strong during the reign of Jaehaerys I. House Strong has a lot of history, but the Lord of Harrenhal, Lionel Strong, and his son Harwin Strong actually died in a fire at Harrenhal. So it kind of seems like if you stay here, you have a high chance of catching on fire. It's kind of my life goal to not catch on fire at any point, and I'm hoping that's one of yours too. Now, the younger Strong son did become the lord of the castle after that, and I don't want to give spoilers for what happens to him, but I will say House Strong isn't very strong, and the castle ends up going to House Lawston. Now, the Lawstons, they did a bit better, but they also had a reputation for black deeds, so probably some of their shenanigans led to some more hauntings. They were into black magic, necromancy, bathing in the blood of people, you know, just normal shit you get around to on the weekends. One particular Lawston, I talked about this in one of my previous Spooktober videos. It was the, I think, 10 Evil Women. It was Danielle, who was called Mad Danielle. She was the one that was said to bathe in the blood of children to remain young. Also, people would tell stories like, hey, if you don't behave, Danielle's gonna send out black bats to get you and bring you back to the castle and kill you and bathe in your blood. House Lawston did eventually fall thanks to Danielle doing her black magic, and just the whole house kind of descended into madness. So their house ended. Next, the castle went to House Went, who for some reason didn't see any of this history as a huge fucking red flag. House Went consisted of knights that once had been loyal to the Lawstons, but then defeated the Mad Family. The Wents held it until Joffrey stripped it from them and gave it to Janos Slynt. Then it was taken from him and given to Petyr Baelish, who I'm sure everything's gonna work out for him perfectly in the books. Speaking of Petyr, though, he does have some quotes on it. I think the most, relevant quote is he said, I gotta do his Batman voice, "Harrenhal has withered every hand to touch it. Cavernous halls and ruined towers, ghosts and droughts, ruinous to heat, impossible to garrison, and there's the small matter of the curse. Oh, and Jaime, Harrenhal had witnessed more horror in its 300 years than Casterly Rock had witnessed in 3,000. And Wyman Manderley says, that is an ill place, curse, they say. Not that I am sort to swallow such tales, but still, there it is." So you got 3 dudes, Jaime, Petyr Baelish, and also Wyman Manderley, all saying this place probably isn't a great location to go to. Now, if you were to ask me, Rawrist, your favorite grandmother, whether I would rather stay in Harrenhal or the Dreadfort, I would 100% pick the Dreadfort. One, the Riverlands are super cursed, and I can't risk a random war breaking out in that location. Also, I like colder places. I'm a ginger with skin that can be described as very, very white. Very. So the further north, the better for me. I do not do well in heat. Also, I really love Halloween, so the spooky decor of the Dreadfort may be fun if I decide on a Halloween visit. Any other time of the year, it might be a little off-putting. As well, I really want to see their flaying room. But you know, that's just me. Like, subscribe, and write if you would rather stay in the Dreadfort or Harrenhal and why.